On today's show, the Atlanta Hawks had their Summer League opener in Las Vegas, and they go down in close-fought fashion, but a lot of positives take away. We'll get into all of what transpired in the game and more on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1517 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening into Saturday. In fact, it is definitely Saturday on the East Coast as I record this podcast from Las Vegas. And we'll be getting into the Hawks Summer League opener, as well as the latest news at the end of the podcast. And I want to encourage you, as always, make sure first listen each and every day. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us across the board, places like Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. But we'll dive into what transpired in Vegas in the opener. I'll say this probably a lot over the next week and a half, but the results don't really matter all that much. But the Hawks lost by 4 points, 80-76 at the hands of the Sacramento Kings in the opener on this Friday evening. Still plenty of flashes from the young guys, which is definitely the most important thing that transpires in Las Vegas. We'll get into all of that as well as the latest news at the end of the podcast. But we'll just dive in right now to kind of how this game flowed. We'll talk about how the players played in a little bit as well, and then some broad takeaways from the evening in Las Vegas. Unsurprisingly, it was a starting lineup that included Kobe Buffkin, AJ Griffin, and Mohamed Gay. They were flanked by Tyrese Martin and Mfiondu Kabengele as the starting center in this one. And people were kind of surprised by to see Kabengele because he's not really going to be on the roster, at least it seems like right now. But Kabengele is kind of the lone real center option on this roster. I've been saying this for a while now, but if you're a new listener, Mohamed Gay has center length, but is not a center. They are not viewing him as a center really at this point in time. In fact, when they announced his contract, he was listed as a forward. He played exclusively on the forward line in this game, so keep that in mind. And it is pretty unusual, I will say, to have a summer league team that has multiple guys that are on the current roster, at least under contract, not starting. But Vit Krejci, Seth Lundy, and Miles Norris all came off the bench. In fact, Norris didn't even play in this game as a two-way guy. We'll come back to that later on. But yeah, there you go on that. That's kind of the way things started off. Kobe and Griffin were mostly no-brainers. I thought Gay was pretty much a no-brainer as well as I got a 4-year contract, but we'll get into all of that as well. Early on, there's a nice skip pass from Kobe Buffkin, who was really under control offensively in this game, played with a lot of poise, I thought, on offense, lots of interesting stuff. Didn't shoot the ball well from three-point range at all in this one, but everything else had turnovers, but certainly was in command for the most part. And I thought he played at least interestingly on that end of the floor, had a nice corner three setup on that pass, had a nice pass later on in that first quarter to set up a three by AJ Griffin on another good find of the corner, had a nice smooth 15-foot pull-up as well, navigated some good on-ball pressure from the Kings, I thought pretty well as well. AJ Griffin looked comfortable to me from the jump, played on the ball quite a bit, didn't shoot it great either, neither did, really no one did in this game other than Brady Manick, we'll come back to in a second. But I thought AJ looked like he was probably too good to be there in a lot of ways. Like we kind of assumed at this point in time, played more on the ball than usual, but his handle's always been really good, but it was definitely crisp in this game. I thought he looked pretty lean to me, not in a bad way, I should say. AJ's always been a kind of a bulky guy. I thought he looked a little bit skinnier, not in a bad way at all, kind of just cut up and in good shape at this point in time, played like as well. Not really a big thing in terms of prospect evaluation, but Kabengele and Neemias Queta actually were going at it a lot in the interior. There was a huge block by Mohamed Gay off the backboard. He did a very good job on that play, kind of using his length to kind of force a shot that he could basically take out at that point in time. He actually tried to dunk on the next trip that would have brought the house down. He didn't make it, but certainly a lot of flash plays from Mohamed Gay in this one. As far as the guys who appeared in this contest off the bench, the first subs were Jarkel Joyner as the backup point guard, who basically played anytime that Buffkin was off the floor in this one. Then it was Vit Krejci, as you might expect. Yves Pons played, Brady Manick as the backup center, and then Seth Lundy played in the second and fourth quarters. Probably actually the least of everybody that played in this game, but did appear, made a corner three in the early going. The Hawks, though, had some really terrible offensive numbers in this game on Friday night. In the first quarter, they were 5-6 from 1 assist and 6 turnovers. At the half, they're only down by 2, but they were shooting 29% from the floor, 4-24 from 3, with 4 assists and 13 turnovers in the first half, and they were only down by 2. So basically, it was his basketball. It was 34-32 at the half in 20 minutes of play. It was a college-like performance in a lot of different ways in very summer league fashion. Buffkin had some foul issues, a couple of soft whistles, I thought, but certainly some rookie stuff, not quite navigating things, and he's going to have to get stronger. That was very, very apparent. There was a nice offensive rebound, I thought, from Gay on a nice putback dunk in the first half as well. He was very active, and a reminder that he actually led the Pac-12 rebounding this year on the offensive glass. So that's going to be an area that he can focus on in the future. But yeah, in general, the first half was the summer league thing. Antonio Lang, who's coaching the Hawks summer league roster, is going to be an assistant on Snyder's staff this year. Talks about how they were a little bit jumpy, a little bit kind of ugly in that first half, and certainly that was backed up on the film. So we'll leave it there for now. We'll get in the second half in a second, but certainly out of the gate, there were some flashes, certainly in the world from anyone across the board they were kind of lucky to be in the game as they were after that first half of play. All right, we'll have more on the second half of this game, as well as my takeaways and some observations, player evaluations, etc. But first, a word from our sponsors on today's show. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's very easy to become everything that everyone actually needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. I go to you this as well in the midst of juggling a million different work things, commitments, etc. When you spend all of your time giving, it sometimes leave us stretched pretty thin or even burned out, so to speak. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life, and part of that is being able to support others without leaving yourself behind. Therapy is exceptionally helpful when it comes to learning coping skills, setting boundaries, etc. It also helps you to be the best version of yourself. If you thought about giving therapy a try in the near future, I recommend giving BetterHelp a try and doing it through them. It is entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is actually do a brief questionnaire, and they'll actually match you with a licensed therapist. If you want to change therapists at any point, you can do so with no charge at BetterHelp. Find more balance today with BetterHelp and visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, and after halftime, it was definitely better from the Hawks on offense. They made some more shots, which certainly helps things. They were kind of just better across the board, I thought. Buck a couple of really crafty buckets in the early portion of the third quarter. Gay had a nice pass to Calvin Gelly and jumped out the screen to me. Marlon had a nice play. Tyrese did on a steal in the backcourt, led to some free throws. He was more aggressive defensively. I thought he played pretty well on the floor in this game. And then defensively overall, the Hawks were better cohesion-wise in the third quarter. Again, they made some shots, hit 4 threes in the third. And then, but still, the Hawks were basically down by some measure for the majority of the first 3 quarters, and they had their one run of the game, a 9-0 run in the fourth quarter, and all 9 points came on at Brady Manic threes. He was absolutely unconscious in the second half of this game. I believe he made 4 of his 5 threes after halftime in only 19 minutes. He was bombing away, and everyone talked about that after the game. Antonio Lang, etc. They were running plays for him because he was so hot. He had one kind of funny heat check moment where he missed a shot pretty badly, but other than that, he was really dialed in. A reminder that he was a very good college player, played in Australia this year, and is a knockdown shooter. It's definitely his one major appeal is his shooting. I thought Martin had to go off his rebound in the middle of that, actually on his own miss, but certainly a nice hustle play there. They had some moments where they thought they actually might run away and win this game. The Kings, though, responded, took the lead back. A couple of really bad possessions, I thought, from the Hawks, kind of some bad shots, a couple turnovers, etc. Calvin Gelly had a 3 in the final minute to go back to get the lead down from 6-3, but it never got closer than that. The Hawks were kind of just in the game, but not quite in the game in the fourth quarter, ended up losing by 4 points. Again, results, not the most important thing at this point in time. As far as the players are concerned, we'll kind of go through the guys who performed in this game. Lang was pretty upbeat after the game, talking about how the guys had to settle down, and they were pretty encouraged. He did note, and I think I certainly agree with this, the Hawks win this game if not for 23 turnovers in a 40-minute game. That is not going to get it done. Obviously, that will get you killed any time. The Kings had 14. That's a lot too, but 23 is really, really a lot. And when you combine that with bad shooting, that was never going to get you over the finish line. In fact, when you have fewer assists than turnovers, and you shoot 34% from the floor and 29% from 3, you're going to lose. Even against the Kings team, it was pretty bad too. Summer league numbers adjusted should be a little bit. Keep that in mind. There's going to be some ugly efficiency numbers a lot of the time, but offensively, it was kind of a mess at times in this game. Still, as for the players themselves off the bench, I thought Joyner and Yves Pons did kind of their normal contributions that you might expect. Joyner was more of that sort of upbeat backup point guard type. He played all minutes, but he did not play. It was purely point guard minutes for Kobe Buffkin in this game. We'll come back to that in a second. Seth Lundy played 9 minutes, hit a 3, took 4 of them, got him up, had 5 rebounds, was very active, didn't play incredibly well, but certainly played well enough. Pons defensively definitely flies around. V. Krejci, I thought, played pretty well. Now, V played only 18 minutes, but had 5 assists, 6 rebounds, no turnovers, 5 points. He definitely played probably the most under control of almost anyone on the roster. No like huge flash plays, but certainly some under the radar, like subtle execution things defensively. He moves the ball very well, good passer. I've always liked Krejci. He doesn't really jump off the screen a lot if you're just kind of casually watching, but he makes the right play, which I think is very useful. Manic at 5 threes, that was his big thing, but he had 17 points to lead all scorers from the Hawks in this game. 17 points in 19 minutes is pretty impressive, but he got up 10 threes in 19 minutes. Pretty wild. The starters, the one guy who struggled, I thought, the most was Tyrese Martin. Offensively, it was a struggle, to be sure. 5 points on one of the 3. He did have some moments defensively, had 4 steals. He was very active there. 9 rebounds. I think Tyrese plays hard and executes well defensively, but offensively, it's kind of a carryover to last season as well. Offensively, he's just there yet, and that's kind of at least a little bit lingering, but I think there were moments offensively that were pretty positive in this game for him. Kevin Galley, again, not a roster guy, but hit 3 threes in this game as the primary center. 13.5 rebounds, 2 steals. He definitely is a pro. He's a professional basketball player. He's on a 2-way contract last year with the Celtics. I'm not sure there's really a path for him to make the team, but certainly a guy who, like, for me, would be in the mix for a 2-way spot, potentially, that kind of thing. He's left, fringe, but certainly a professional player, and the Hawks kind of just needed a center to play in this game. He was actually pretty good, I thought. Muhammad Gay is probably the biggest storyline from Hawks fans. I think the takes, predictably, and look, this is Summer League. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be takey in that way. And the flashes were really impressive for Muhammad Gay. Again, a couple of really big, impressive, rim protection moments. Had the one huge block, tried the one big dunk. If you look a little bit closer, he was not particularly good, like, on the numbers in this game. 4 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3. He talked about this after the game. I actually have some audio that I won't play for you now. It's pretty long. But Gay basically said that everyone is encouraging him, including the staff, to shoot more. And I think that's probably a good idea. It's a reminder that if you haven't watched him, he definitely is more of a perimeter player on offense right now. They're more. Also, 1 defensive rebound is kind of weird. Not the most physical guy in the world, but definitely has great tools. That's what I was stressing. I talked about that on the podcast as well. He has fantastic tools, and the flashes are going to be pretty impressive. I think right now flashes are ahead of what he actually is, but that's okay. I think that the Hawks are betting on his traits, I should say. His combination of length, burst athletically, and the ability to actually be able to shoot long term, have some ball skills. Like, there's a lot in the package there. I think people are getting a little over their skis, and that's definitely to be expected, but the flash is really impressive. I thought he had a very encouraging first game on the whole. And then you have AJ and Kobe in the backcourt. Kobe was 0 of 8 from 3 in this game, which I think is not like a concern for me moving forward. I think he's going to be a solid shooter. Got up 8 threes is pretty impressive, actually. 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. 8 turnovers is a lot, obviously, and 8 fouls. So it was a rookie game, Kobe Buffkin. He talked about this after the game, like processing speed, making good decisions, all that stuff. I think offensively, I'm not worried. The turnovers are a lot, but I think he showed a lot of, like, good, ball control things, good vision things. I think he was probably could have had 8, 9 assists in this game with the way he set up some shooting and just didn't go in. But I thought he played pretty well on offense outside of the turnovers. Defensively, there were some concerns. I think the fouls are not surprising, but notable. Also, Buffkin is something I talked about a lot already on the podcast, both with Dylan Burkhart when he was on the show and other people that in the last couple of days and weeks since he was drafted. But he's going to have to put on some strength. I think that was very evident in this game, even more so than maybe in other games. But he was getting bumped off his spots defensively a lot, and that was notable to me. I think that's just not a surprise and not new, but notable. And then the other thing was Lang after the game talked about how Buffkin, they basically asked him to do something that he's never done before. And that's probably true. He played a little bit of point guard at Michigan, but generally speaking, he played entirely point guard tonight. And Lang said that was basically just out of his comfort zone. I've said before, he's more of a combo. I think you cannot rely on him to be a point guard only right now, but they're wisely, in my opinion, giving him the keys in Summer League. And that's probably the reason why you want to do that right now. Good reps, good opportunity for him to do that. But just keep that in mind. He's definitely doing something a little bit newer than he has shown in the past. And Lang was effusive in his praise of him for sure, but just kind of doing that after the game. And then Griffin looked like Griffin's supposed to look, honestly. He didn't play like incredibly well. He was only 1 of 5 on 2s in this game, 3 of 9 on 3s, but 9 rebounds, had 12 points, like just looked like a good player. Like he wasn't like lights out, but the ball handling is there. The maturity is there. The shot making is not ever going to be a concern. So I don't have much to add on AJ. Not going to be a concern. He didn't jump off the page, but I think he'll probably play one more game in Summer League. And that's probably the end of AJ Griffin in Las Vegas. At any rate, plenty to get excited about. Again, kind of a loss. Obviously, it was a loss for the Hawks, and no one was like perfect in this game. I think Gay probably had the most flashes. 3-point shooting. Bufkin looked fine. I thought Griffin was fine. No one like had an unbelievable game. Even Gay, who got a lot of attention, like didn't have this fantastic game if you watch the entire thing back. But a lot of good moments, a lot of good execution things, and it's kind of watching the progression. I'm sure I'll have Glenn Willis on the podcast in the near future talking about the Summer League stuff because he's in Las Vegas right now as well, and he's definitely all into the details. But the Hawks had some nice moments, and that's kind of all you can ask for any Summer League opener. And as a reminder, they play again this weekend on Sunday evening. That's the next game on the agenda for Atlanta in Las Vegas. The third and fourth games are in the afternoon later on in the week, but Sunday's game's a 9:30 start. NBA TV. Denver's not a huge like draw in terms of like big names. They do have a lot of NBA like caliber players: Peyton Watson, Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, etc. So probably a little bit more talent on Denver's roster than it was for the Kings roster tonight. But we'll get into all that stuff on Sunday evening as I always will do a show from Las Vegas. But with all that said, we'll have one more little podcast with regard to the latest news on the trade stuff and extension stuff, and also Pascal Siakam. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show today. All right, and at the end of the show, we'll have some news catch up here on a Friday evening into Saturday. The John Collins trade is done and official. No surprises. They created the trade exception that we talked about, $25 million, a very large one for the Hawks to use in the future. I think that we use part of that in the Washington Garuba trade, which is, by the way, as I record this podcast, still not announced. Also, the conditional second-round pick the Hawks are getting in the Collins trade is coming from Memphis. If it falls between 31 and 42, it could be nothing. It's conditional, but it's a pick to use. And I'll read the quote to you from the press release. Quote, being able to create financial flexibility moving forward was a major priority for us. The added flexibility will give us greater optionality as we look to opportunities to improve our team. John was a contributor to our team over the past 6 seasons and played an instrumental role in helping us become a regular playoff contender. We'd like to thank him for professionalism and leadership over the years and wish him the best in Utah. End quote. I thought it was notable and a bit amusing that the first sentence was about financial flexibility. Because as I've said many times, the Hawks have been trying to duck the tax. At least last year it was very, very evident. This year they can still go over. I'm not saying they won't, but it's certainly notable to me and others that they got under the tax with that move. And the first sentence being about financial flexibility is kind of funny. But anyway, that's where we are. No surprises. Rudy Gay in the trade. We'll see if Rudy actually sticks around. Now that deal is finally done. Elsewhere, I purposely didn't talk about basketball a lot on the Emergency podcast. And by the way, if you missed it, I talked about the Dejounte Murray extension in some detail on Thursday evening into Friday. Murray was already on the team. There's not like a ton of basketball impact there. But obviously for the future, we'll get into this more often about future books and all that stuff. But I did a full deep dive on Murray with Glenn Willis earlier this summer. All of that still holds up now. That was all about basketball for about an hour. So that's still on this podcast feed. There's still some fit questions with Trey both into the floor, obviously. Murray's defense, I thought, was not very good this year in a way that they just can't afford it to not be. But I want to make the overarching point now that the extension, again, is good for the team, independent of all of basketball questions, concerns, however you want to say that. It is a below market that they can trade, if nothing else, if they want to or if they need to. One more thing that I should note yesterday, the free agent market is pretty late for next year, and Murray's agency, Clutch, was also the one that negotiated a huge deal for a pretty comparable player in Fred VanVleet. So I think, again, that kind of goes into the bucket of like, I think Murray would have gotten more than this. And that's why this is kind of a good deal for the Hawks, even though they were kind of limited on what they can offer him. So even more signs of optimism there. Plus you would think, and I think I would probably estimate this as we'll get closer to talking about this next season coming up, there's definitely a chance that Murray has a better season coming up. You have Quinn Snyder coming into the mix, being involved in the beginning and a little bit more creativity overall, having another year of sort of experience with him and Trey. I think defensively, they'll hopefully be able to get back to where he used to be, closer to that, at least anyway, in San Antonio. So I think, if anything, I would expect him to be as good or better than he was last year. And then if that happens, the deal looks even better moving forward. Last thing is about Pascal Siakam. There was a little bit of semi-news from Mark Stein on a podcast with Chris Haynes that dropped at the end of the week. I'm going to read the quote to you from Stein. Again, this is on a podcast. It was not written, but I quoted him on this. Quote, the resistance to a trade to Atlanta has really been on his side with regard to Siakam. Precisely where the Raptors fall in terms of trading Siakam has been a lot harder to pinpoint, as it often is with the Raptors. And more Stein, here we go again, quote, the message has been sent, whispered, maybe even louder than whispered, that Siakam really wouldn't be interested in the contract extension if the Hawks were to move for him, end quote. So none of this is brand new. Chris Haynes talked about how Siakam's not really trying to sign anywhere long-term, but the fact that Stein talked about the Hawks specifically that's notable to me. I tweeted out this quote and people, Hawks fans were bothered by this. I get all sides of this, but because it's Atlanta specific and from the Hawks standpoint, I think I've said this before, but you can't give up what I think it would probably take to get Siakam. If you're really, really hearing from Siakam and his people and his camp and his agency, et cetera, that he's not intending to resign or intending to extend or anything like that. You can't take the risk of paying what I think you're going to probably have to pay to get Siakam. Because again, as a reminder, if you missed the podcast the other day about Murray's now off the table for 6 months. He cannot be traded. So if you're going to get Siakam, it would have to be basically, I shouldn't say have to be, it would likely be around DeAndre Hunter and whatever else. And I think because Hunter is obviously not as good as Siakam, the Raptors would be asking for quite a bit else. So you're talking about young guys, like whether it be Bufkin or Griffin or Johnson, et cetera, or Kongwu even, or draft picks or both. And if you're going to give up all that, you better be really sure, or at least pretty sure, that Siakam's going to consider staying with you long-term. You cannot afford to trade that for a rental. So if the intel from Stein that he's passing along there is that basically Siakam has been whispering or louder than that he's not interested in staying in Atlanta, that is enough to scare me off if I'm the Hawks. So keep that in mind. Obviously, I wouldn't say that deal is totally dead, but the Murray extension probably made it a little bit harder on all sides. And also, it's getting later in the offseason at this point in time. We'll have more on this in the future if we need to, but I thought that was pretty interesting to pass along at this point. Okay. That's all I have on this late night edition of the podcast as we get into Saturday morning at this point. Please stay tuned and please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Please follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Follow my written work, patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thank you for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it. Unless there is huge news on Saturday, I will be holding off until after the game on Sunday. So please stay tuned and we'll see you all next time.